When I was your age, many, many years ago, those of you who are in college now, and even before that, when I was still in high school again, the tension was expressed in institutional or in constitutional terms. That is, a separation of church and state, because at that time the major thesis in ecclesiology, as we studied it in the seminary before the council, or even during the council when I was in seminary, the ecclesiological perspective was that the state had the obligation to protect its citizens against error, particularly error in the view of religion, and therefore there should be a religion that is recognized by the state, even though the state itself is not religious. Nonetheless, one of its obligations was not to separate itself from religion, but rather to embrace it in such a way so that society itself would know the truth and could live in an upright way. And the Second Vatican Council spoke rather not about the nature of the state, but the nature of human freedom, and especially the nature of religious assent as intrinsically free, something that can never be imposed, particularly by a secular authority. The Catholic Church is essentially, and by divine foundation, by jus divinum, a fully hierarchical church, whereas the foundational document of the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence, proclaims in ringing words that all men are created equal. Of course, it's always been a part of church teaching that human persons are, without exception, metaphysically equal, and therefore equal before God. As St. Paul says in his letter to the Romans, God has no favorites. The question arises, why is the implementation of the council in large parts of the church thus far been so difficult? It all depends on the correct interpretation of the council, or, as we would say today, on its proper hermeneutics, the correct key to its interpretation and application. The problems in its implementation arose from the fact that two contrary hermeneutics, interpretations, came face to face and quarreled with each other. One caused confusion, the other silently, but more and more visibly, bore and is bearing fruit. On the one hand, there's an interpretation that I would call a hermeneutic of discontinuity and rupture. It has frequently availed itself of the sympathies of the mass media, and also one trend of modern theology. Popularly, 30 years ago even, people were saying the church has caught up with the American experience in the Second Vatican Council. Let me just mention two instances of the kind of tension that has been reduced by grabbing one horn and forgetting the other, which are potent in forming the life of the church and also in forming our society. The first is the Lefebvre's attempt to say that Catholicism cannot change at all, or it will betray its own nature, it will betray its identity. To change, even from renewal, reform in any way is introduced into the internal life of the church. All those who are, quote, convinced that they know the truth and firmly adhere to it are considered unreliable from a democratic point of view. Faithful Catholics might, in fact, be unreliable from a democratic point of view in the respect that they, in and through their church, insist that the democratic social political order must be conformed to higher laws and true human rights through means that are both prudent and otherwise in conformity with valid positive law based upon natural human morality, natural law.
As President of Ave Maria University, on behalf of the Chancellor Thomas Monahan and the University Board of Trustees, it gives me great pleasure to confer upon you, Francis Cardinal George, the degree of Doctor of Letters honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, responsibilities, and perquisites thereto appertaining.